So in this module, we are going to practice a couple different count functions. Count function could be useful if you want to count just certain things. We would use a COUNTIF function, or if you want to count the number of occurrences. For example, maybe you want to know how many product IDs there are. And in this table here, it doesn't start in row 1 and it could go down, it could start in a different row. So it might be harder to count because it's not matching up with the row headings. So when we want to count occurrences of something, we could use a count or a COUNTIF function. If we want to count data that is numbers, that are numbers, we would use the count function, and that looks like this. I like to type my functions out, and then I'm going to double click on the function. And then I will select one of these columns that just has numbers. Dates, the computer reads the dates through Excel as numbers, so you could select this column if you wanted to. You could select any one of these 4 columns here. We could not select this column here, or we could. Let's see what happens. These numbers have dashes in them. So let's see what happens when we select this range, and the count function just asks for a range, and it says 0. So you can see here that when we use the count function, the range has to be data that is just numbers. So we can use the stock date if we want. I select and hit my enter key and get my answer. To count data that are not numbers, we use the COUNTIF function. So again, I like to type out however you like to start your functions, you can do that. And now I could select this column here if I wanted to and hit my enter key and get my answer. If we wanted to know just how many A's or how many vegetable types there are, we could use a COUNTIF function. So basically, a COUNTIF function would look like this. I type out my count, I'm going to double click on COUNTIF to get it started. So this argument has 2 things, the range. So this is my range, and I'm going to select the whole range because this data might change. These grades are based on the shelf life. So if something changes, this data could change. So I'm not going to select A here for my criteria, and I'm going to make sure that I select this whole range. And then I type a comma, and again, now it's asking for my criteria, and I'm not going to select my criteria from my data because my data might change. So one way to do it is to type in my data, and since here my data is a word, we need to use quotation marks. So quotation A, quotation, enter, and I can see how many grade A's there are. Another way to do this is if you have an example like this where you've listed your criteria and this is stable and will not change, you can use this cell address instead of typing it in. And that would look like this, equals COUNTIF. Again, our range. We always select all the data because the data can change, comma, and click in this cell for our criteria and enter. The easiest way, actually, if you were in this situation, would be to do something like this. Choose your COUNTIF function, choose your range, and then make your range absolute cell reference. You can see up here in my formula bar that it's now added the dollar signs. Remember, you can use your F4 key. If your F keys have a different function, make sure to hold down the FN key at the bottom left of your keyboard and then tap the F4 key. Now type a comma, and then I will select my data, and I'm sorry, I'm doing this backwards. So I'm going to select my criteria and hit enter. And let's see if this works. I'm actually going to copy it backwards, going the other way, and I think it did. Let me go up here. It did. So I should have started up here to show you not a better way to do it, but a little bit easier to understand. So this way we selected our range using absolute cell reference, which means when we copy this function down, it'll use the same range for B and the same range for C. And that's what we want to happen. Then we kept these three guys here using relative cell reference, which means when we copy the function down, or as you noticed, even if we copy it up, it will go up or down. So, and that's exactly what we want to do, right? Because we can use these for our criteria. Let's look at that again. I'm going to do the same thing here for vegetable type. Count if, select my function, select my range, this time it's the type, F4 key, comma, choose vegetable. I'm going to click on this check mark for my enter, and then I can copy this down. Again, using absolute cell reference, it maintains our range, and then using relative cell reference for our criteria, it copied it down here.